I have two issues that I need to address with the front of the trailer. This is too much length here, so that's going to get cut probably to about there. And I'll tell you why I left it long and then why I've decided to cut it. And where the bow eye meets this rubber stopper here on the winch, it's in a perfect place for delivery and moving the boat around, but when the boat is in the water and it's loading, the back end is up and it really pushes the bow eye into this rubber and almost level with it. So you can see that this trailer has different settings. I'm going to move that down one, and we'll see upon the next loading if that's enough. Should be, but if it's not, then no big deal, I'll just move it down again. These are 9/16 nuts, and the bolt heads are 9/16, so just sticking a wrench inside there and allowing it to move, let's see here, there we go. Yeah, just letting the wrench go back and forth, it stops and creates the back pressure that I need to spin the nuts off. That's definitely much better. It does leave some paint marks behind because obviously the trailer was put together and painted regardless. It doesn't matter to me. This ain't a beauty contest. Mechanically, it's much better in its placement, and I think that should work fine. Like I said, if it doesn't, I'll lower it one more. But let's see how that works on the next launch. And it's time to get started on shortening the length of this. I'll mark it out and then trim it down. First going to remove that stuff. Alright, you can see, let me get this lifted up. That the chains are connected through this bolt here, and then of course the wiring goes all the way down the tube to the lights at the back of the boat. So unbolt this is what I'm going to do, and then we'll mark back there, and let's just do it. So I'm going to be using this rafter measure here to get a good 90 on the cut and make my marks, but as you can see with the tape measure, we're going to be removing 2 foot 4 inches of length. Before we begin cutting, I'll show you this angled aluminum here. I'm going to use that to depress the wire into the corner, allowing me to cut the right hand of the screen side, and then I'll flip it this way and push it over here, and then I'll be able to cut on the left hand side. Okay, I don't know if you can see inside of there, but if you can see that aluminum has got the wire off to the side. So now I'm going to flip it over to the side that's already cut, and then go ahead and continue cutting. Also, I almost forgot, I have the tongue weight on this jack stand, and so it's important to crank up and put it on the wheel here, because you don't want any pressure on metal when you're cutting it. I almost did that, but I figured it out at the last minute, so I've since taken the pressure off so my cut won't happen and then have everything fall down. There we go, the protection worked as I had hoped it would. There's the wires uncut. So I'm just gonna rock this back and forth till that snaps, and then make the marks for the tongue. So I'm going to hammer this down so I can make some marks to drill my holes. I'm going to give this a little blast of white paint. Alright, here's the tongue. You can see how this mechanism works. I'll set the camera down and try to show you. But where my thumb is, there's some overspray of paint and some debris in there, and that is kind of making this piece is supposed to come down. That literally, that's what creates tension against the ball on your receiver. Stick a little. So I'm going to clean it out and grease it up. Alright, so I can't hold this up and film at the same time. I'm going to go down and put some grease in there and then move it around with my fingers. There, that's marine grease. Maybe that'll last a little longer in the wetness. We'll see. While the paint for the tongue is drying, I'm going to drill these 4 holes. First I'll start with the pilot hole, and then I'll step up to the actual size of the bolts. Alright, now that we're cut to length and before I put the tongue on, not going to trim these wires. I'm actually just going to loop it up, stuff it inside. But I am going to replace this plastic sheathing here and cover it with vinyl tape. If I didn't have any at home that's new, I would just reuse this and tape over it, but it looks a little ratty, so why don't we go ahead and just replace it. So before I put on that sheathing, I'm wrapping with vinyl tape, and some of the wires had I don't know, like micro cracks in this section of the insulation. So I separated the legs and wrapped them with one piece of vinyl tape. Vinyl tape is rated for 600 volts per lap, so that's way more than enough to keep electricity from arcing between these, if that in case is something that was going to happen. So I have them separated, then I'm going to run them underneath one as I wrap it, and then I'll put the sheathing on. Okay, that's a slack loop of the wire. So rather than cutting and trimming it and splicing it, I'm just folding it back and forth. Put some vinyl tape on there, leave an end for a friend. This is all wrapped up. I'm going to slide this in, then I'm going to install the tongue and the chains and see how this sits. I may end up tie wrapping it to something in this area to keep it from moving. I may not. We'll see where everything falls in place. Alright, so this is the bolt that the chain will be going through, and all I did was simply fold the chain in half. This is our link that will go inside here, and the bolt will pass through. Alright, and just like that, it's done. Here's the end. I put 2 tie wraps onto this piece of link of chain. It can bend out of the way of the ball, no problem. And it can reach the plug in the back of my car, no problem. So everybody who does this will have a little bit of different situation, because where your boat plugs into your vehicle is different on every vehicle. Alright, I got the whole thing reassembled, and thinking about this bolt here and how it's a little worn out and it's sort of soft metal, is holding the chains, so if something should happen, this would be what I'd rely on to keep the trailer behind the car, and I just don't feel comfortable with it for either myself or people behind me. So I bought grade 8 hardened bolts, and these will be taking the place of the old ones. So I just figured I'd share something with you. I got to thinking about it, and lots of times when you think about something and you know better, I'd rather do it now than say I knew better after an incident. So that's my reasoning. That's what I'm doing. Great.